What happens when two strong personalities collide on live television over a topic that cuts deeper than anyone expected? The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife as Fonda sat across from Joy Behar on The View. And what started as a routine interview quickly spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history. Before we get into exactly what was said that made Jane stand up and walk off that set, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below telling us what you think about what you're about to witness. The interview began innocuously enough. Jane had come on the show to discuss her latest activism work and her upcoming projects. The panel welcomed her with the usual warmth. The audience applauded, and for the first few minutes everything seemed perfectly cordial. Jane was articulate and passionate as always, discussing climate change initiatives and her continued work in social justice. The other hosts nodded along, asking supportive questions, building up what seemed like it would be just another promotional appearance. But then Joy pivoted. She leaned forward slightly, her tone shifting from conversational to pointed. "Jane, I want to ask you about something that's been on my mind. You've been an activist for decades, and I respect that. I really do. But there's something I think we need to address. How do you reconcile your current activism with some of the positions you took in the past that, let's be honest, a lot of people found deeply problematic?" The studio seemed to hold its breath. Jane's expression flickered, just for a moment, before she composed herself. "Joy, I think if you're referring to Vietnam, I've addressed that countless times over the years. I've apologized, I've explained the context, and I've spent decades trying to make amends through my work." Joy didn't back down. "I'm not just talking about Vietnam, though that's certainly part of it. I'm talking about a pattern of taking positions that seem to many people to prioritize being provocative over being thoughtful. And I think it's fair to ask whether your activism has always been about the causes themselves or about keeping Jane Fonda in the spotlight." You could see the other hosts exchanging uncomfortable glances. This wasn't the playful sparring The View was known for. This felt personal. Jane straightened in her chair, her voice taking on an edge. "That's quite an accusation. Joy, I've put my body, my career, my reputation on the line for things I believe in. Have I made mistakes? Absolutely. Have I learned from them? I'd like to think so. But to suggest that my activism is about ego rather than conviction, that's not just unfair, it's insulting." Joy pressed on, seemingly undeterred by the growing tension. "I'm not trying to insult you. I'm trying to have an honest conversation. Because I think there's a difference between activism and performance. And sometimes, Jane, it feels like you're performing. Like when you get arrested at climate protests, it makes headlines. You get attention. And then what? What actually changes?" Jane's jaw tightened. "What changes?" "Joy. Awareness changes. Conversation changes. The fact that when someone with a platform uses it, it reaches people who might not otherwise engage with these issues. That's not performance, that's strategy. And frankly, I'm surprised that you, of all people, would reduce decades of committed work to mere attention-seeking." The audience was silent now, the usual applause and reactions conspicuously absent. This was uncomfortable television, the kind where you can't look away, even though part of you wants to. Joy continued. "I'm not reducing anything. I'm asking questions that I think a lot of people want answered. Because here's the thing, you come on shows like this, you promote your causes, you get applause, and then you go back to your life. Meanwhile, ordinary people who can't afford to get arrested, who don't have the luxury of a platform, they're the ones doing the day-to-day work without cameras." Jane's voice rose slightly, her composure cracking. "You think I don't know that? You think I'm not aware of the privilege I have? That's exactly why I use it. And I don't appreciate being lectured about authenticity by someone who's made a career out of talking about issues from behind a desk. At least I'm out there. At least I'm willing to put myself on the line." Joy's eyes widened. "Behind a desk? Jane, I've been using this platform to advocate for issues for years. Just because I'm not getting arrested for the cameras doesn't mean I'm not making a difference. And that comment right there, that's exactly what I'm talking about. This sense that your form of activism is somehow more legitimate, more real, than anyone else's." The other hosts tried to interject, to redirect the conversation, but both Jane and Joy were locked in now. Jane leaned forward, her voice sharp. "I never said that. What I'm saying is that you invited me here, presumably to have a conversation. And instead, you're using this time to take shots at my character and my life's work. If you had issues with me, Joy, perhaps we could have discussed them off camera rather than ambushing me on live television." Joy shot back. "This isn't an ambush. This is journalism. This is asking tough questions. And if you can't handle being challenged, maybe you shouldn't put yourself out there as a public figure taking controversial positions. You can't have it both ways. Jane, you can't court attention for your activism and then cry foul when someone questions your methods or your motivations." Jane stood up abruptly, her microphone still attached. "I'm not crying foul, Joy. I'm recognizing that this conversation has stopped being productive. You're not interested in understanding my work or having a genuine dialogue. You're interested in scoring points and creating a moment. Well, congratulations. you've got your moment. She reached down and began removing her microphone pack, her hands shaking slightly with what appeared to be anger, frustration, or both. The camera operators didn't know quite where to focus. The other hosts were frozen, unsure whether to try to stop Jane or let the moment play out. Joy sat back in her chair, her expression unreadable. Jane, sit down. We can continue this conversation like adults. Jane shook her head, dropping the microphone onto her chair. No, Joy, I don't think we can, because this stopped being a conversation the moment you decided to use it as an opportunity to diminish my life's work. I've spent decades fighting for things I believe in, making mistakes, learning, growing, and trying to make a positive impact on this world. I don't need to justify that to you or anyone else on national television. Joy's voice cut through the studio tension. You're really going to walk away, just like that, because someone dared to ask you difficult questions. There was a challenge in her tone, almost daring Jane to leave, as if proving some point Joy had been trying to make all along. Jane paused, turning back toward the table. For a moment, it seemed like she might sit back down, might try to salvage the interview. But then she spoke, and her words were measured, deliberate, and ice cold. You know what, Joy? You're right. Let's continue this conversation like adults. Let's talk about asking difficult questions. When's the last time you asked yourself a difficult question? When's the last time you examined whether your platform is being used to elevate important issues or to tear down people who are actually trying to make a difference? Joy's face flushed. Excuse me, I examine my work every single day. I think about the impact of what I say and how I say it. That's my job. But unlike you, I don't wrap myself in a cloak of moral superiority while doing it. One of the other hosts, clearly uncomfortable, tried to intervene. Ladies, maybe we should take a breath here, and Jane cut her off, but kept her eyes fixed on Joy. Moral superiority. Is that what you think this is? Joy, I came here in good faith to talk about climate change, about the work that needs to be done to protect our planet for future generations. Instead, you've turned this into a personal attack, disguised as journalism. There's a difference between holding someone accountable and using your position to bully them on national television. The word bully hung in the air like a grenade. Joy's expression hardened. Bully? You're calling me a bully? Jane, you have got to be kidding me. I asked you legitimate questions about your past and your methods. If that feels like bullying to you, maybe you need to develop thicker skin. You've been in this business long enough to know that public figures get questioned. It comes with the territory. Jane's laugh was bitter. Oh, I have thick skin, Joy. Trust me, you don't survive in Hollywood for as many decades as I have without it. But there's a difference between tough questions and a predetermined narrative. You decided before I even sat down what this conversation was going to be. You weren't interested in what I had to say about the climate crisis or any of the actual work being done. You wanted to litigate my past and question my motives. That's not journalism. That's a hit piece. Joy stood up now too, matching Jane's energy. A hit piece? I'm sitting here trying to have an honest conversation about activism, about what it means to truly make change versus what it means to make headlines. And you're so defensive you can't even engage with the substance of what I'm saying. Maybe that defensiveness tells us something. Jane took a step closer to the table, her voice rising. What it tells you is that I recognize a bad faith argument when I hear one. You want to talk about substance? Fine, let's talk about substance. What have you done, Joy, outside of this studio, to address climate change? What protests have you attended? What organizations have you volunteered with? What personal sacrifices have you made for the causes you claim to care about? The other hosts looked like they wanted to disappear. This had gone far beyond a spirited debate. This was personal now, and it was escalating. Joy's voice was sharp as a blade. I don't need to prove my credentials to you, Jane. My work speaks for itself. And just because I'm not getting arrested for photo opportunities doesn't mean I'm not making a difference. I use this platform every single day to inform millions of viewers about important issues. That's my contribution. But you're so caught up in your own mythology that you can't see any form of activism as valid unless it looks exactly like yours. Jane shook her head slowly. You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about me thinking my activism is superior. This is about you using your platform to tear down someone who's actually doing something rather than using that same energy to build up the movement. We should be allies, Joy. We should be working together to push these issues forward. Instead, you're more interested in creating conflict for ratings. Joy pointed at Jane, her finger trembling slightly with emotion. Don't you dare lecture me about ratings. You think walking off this set isn't about creating a moment? You think this righteous indignation act isn't calculated? Everything you do is calculated, Jane. Every protest, every interview, every carefully crafted public apology. It's all part of the Jane Fonda brand. And I'm sorry if it bothers you that someone finally called it out. The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this unfold with a mixture of shock and fascination. Jane's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. You want to talk about calculation? Let's talk about how you calculated that attacking me would be good television. How you calculated that going after someone with a complicated past would make you look bold and unafraid. How you calculated that this moment right here would get clips shared across social media and boost your profile. You're accusing me of exactly what you're doing, Joy. Another host attempted to break in, her voice almost pleading. Can we please just take a moment to Joy ignored her completely? My profile doesn't need boosting. Jane, I've built a career on being honest and direct, on not letting people hide behind their celebrity or their causes. And if that makes me unpopular with some people, so be it. I'd rather be honest than liked. Jane's smile was cold. How convenient that being honest, in your definition, means being cruel. There's a way to ask hard questions with respect. Joy. There's a way to challenge people without trying to humiliate them. But you chose this approach. You chose to make this personal. And now you're upset that I'm not just sitting here taking it with a smile. Joy crossed her arms. I'm not upset at all. I'm actually fascinated. Because this reaction right here proves everything I was saying. You can dish it out. You can take controversial positions and make provocative statements. But the moment someone pushes back, you fall apart. You throw around words like bully and attack and hit piece because you can't handle being treated like everyone else. Jane grabbed her purse from beside the chair. You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right about one thing. I don't have to sit here and take this. Not from you, not from anyone. I've spent too many years letting people define me, letting people tell me who I am and what my motivations are. I'm done with that, and I'm especially done with it coming from someone who claims to be progressive but uses conservative talking points to take down other women. That last comment landed like a slap. Joy's eyes flashed. Conservative talking points. Are you serious right now? Holding you accountable is not a conservative talking point, Jane. It's called integrity. It's called not giving people a pass just because they're on our side politically. We should hold our own side to even higher standards. Jane moved toward the edge of the set. Higher standards. Joy, you ambushed a guest on your show, questioned her life's work, her motivations, her authenticity, all under the guise of tough journalism. That's not higher standards. That's just mean. And you can dress it up however you want. But at the end of the day, you used your position of power on this show to try to make me look bad. What did that accomplish except creating exactly the kind of division that makes it harder for any of us to make real progress on the issues that actually matter? Joy took a step toward Jane. You want to know what it accomplished? It showed people that no one is above scrutiny. It showed people that we should question our leaders and our spokespeople, even the ones we admire, especially the ones we admire, because blind faith in charismatic figures is how movements lose their way. Jane stopped in her tracks, turning to face Joy one final time. Blind faith. Is that what you think people have in me? Joy, I've been criticized, scrutinized, and vilified for decades. People have burned my movies, protested my appearances, sent me death threats. I've been called a traitor, a communist, 100 other things. Nobody follows me blindly. The people who support the causes I champion do so because they believe in those causes, not because of me. But you've reduced all of that to some kind of personality cult because it fits the narrative you decided on before I even walked in here. Joy's voice was steady but fierce. Then why are you so angry, Jane? If you're secure in your work, if you're confident in your motivations, why does it bother you so much that I'm asking questions? Why can't you just answer them straightforwardly instead of deflecting and attacking me? Jane's hands clenched at her sides. Because your questions aren't questions, Joy. They're accusations dressed up as inquiries. There's a difference between asking someone to reflect on their journey and implying that their entire life's work is performative narcissism. You didn't ask me to share what I've learned or how I've grown. You didn't ask me about the successes and failures of different activist strategies. You went straight for the jugular, questioning my character and my intentions. That's not journalism, that's character assassination. Joy threw her hands up. Oh, please, character assassination. I asked you about your past and your methods. If that's character assassination, then every journalist who's ever asked a tough question is an assassin. You're being incredibly dramatic, which frankly just reinforces my point about everything being a performance with you. One of the other hosts finally managed to interject with more force. Okay, I think we really need to step back here, and Jane cut her off again. But her tone was different now, less angry and more exhausted. No, let me finish. Joy, I've been in the public eye for longer than some people watching this have been alive. I've made mistakes, big ones, and I've owned them. I've apologized. I've tried to do better. I've dedicated my life to trying to leave the world better than I found it. Is that performance? Maybe to you it is. Maybe you're so cynical that you can't imagine someone genuinely caring about something beyond themselves. But that says more about you than it does about me. Joy's face reddened. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. You don't know anything about what I care about or why I do what I do. And cynicism, I'm not cynical for expecting people with platforms and power to be held accountable. That's not cynicism, that's responsibility. Something you seem to think you're exempt from. Jane's laugh was hollow. Exempt? I've been held accountable my entire life. Joy, every single day. But there's accountability, and then there's what you're doing, which is trying to delegitimize decades of work because, what? You think I haven't suffered enough? You think I haven't paid a high enough price for my mistakes? What would satisfy you, Joy? What would be enough penance in your eyes? Joy stepped even closer now, and the energy between them was electric with hostility. This isn't about penance. Stop making yourself the victim here. This is about whether celebrity activism actually helps causes or whether it turns important movements into vehicles for personal branding. And I think that's a fair question that deserves examination. Jane's voice rose again. Then examine it. Write an article about it. Do a segment on it. But don't invite someone onto your show under the pretense of discussing their current work, only to blindside them with a prosecutorial interrogation. That's dishonest, Joy. And if you can't see that, if you genuinely think what you did here today was fair or appropriate, then I truly feel sorry for you. Joy's eyes narrowed. Save your pity. I don't need it. What I need is for people in positions of influence to be honest about what they're doing and why. And if you can't handle that kind of scrutiny, maybe you should reconsider putting yourself in the public eye. Jane picked up her purse, slinging it over her shoulder with finality. You know what the saddest part of this is? Joy, we're on the same side. We both care about social justice, about equality, about making the world better. But instead of building each other up, instead of finding ways to work together despite our different approaches, you chose to tear me down on national television. You chose division over solidarity. And for what? A viral moment, higher ratings, whatever it was, I hope it was worth it. Joy's voice was cold now. Don't put this on me. You're the one walking away. You're the one who couldn't handle a challenging conversation. I'm still standing here, ready to continue. But you've decided to make a dramatic exit because that's what you do. Everything is theater with you. Jane shook her head, and for the first time, there was something like sadness in her expression beneath the anger. You really believe that, don't you? You really think this is all just an act? Joy, I'm walking away because this conversation stopped being productive the moment it started. You're not interested in understanding. You're interested in winning. And I'm too old and too tired to play that game anymore. Life is too short, and the problems we're facing as a society are too urgent for this kind of pointless conflict. Another host tried desperately to salvage something. Jane, please, maybe if we just take a break and come back to this with cooler heads. Jane turned to address her directly, and her voice softened slightly. I appreciate that, I really do. But no, some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt in a commercial break. Joy made her position clear, and I've made mine clear. There's nothing left to say. She turned back to Joy one last time. I hope someday you'll understand that we should be lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. We have enough enemies without making them out of our allies. Joy stood her ground, arms still crossed. If you were really an ally, you'd be able to withstand criticism and engage with it productively instead of running away. That's what allies do. They challenge each other to be better. But you don't want to be better. You want to be worshipped. And I'm sorry, but that's not what you're going to get from me. Jane's final words were quiet but cutting. I never asked to be worshipped, Joy. I asked to be treated with basic human respect. The fact that you think those two things are the same tells me everything I need to know about how this conversation was always going to go. Goodbye. And with that, Jane Fonda walked off the set of The View, leaving behind a stunned audience, shocked hosts, and Joy Behar, standing alone at the table. The cameras didn't know where to focus. Should they follow Jane as she disappeared into the wings? Should they stay on Joy's face, trying to read her expression? Should they cut to the other hosts, who looked like they'd just witnessed a car crash? The moment hung there, suspended in uncomfortable silence, until finally one of the producers called for a commercial break. But the damage was done. The interview that was supposed to be about climate activism had turned into something else entirely. A raw and unfiltered clash between two strong-willed women who couldn't find common ground. Broadcast live for millions to witness. Joy slowly sat back down, her expression unreadable. The other hosts exchanged glances, unsure whether to comfort her or call her out. The studio audience remained silent, processing what they'd just seen. Whatever anyone thought about who was right or wrong in this exchange, one thing was undeniable. This was a moment that would be talked about for a long time to come. A moment that raised questions about activism, about accountability, about how we engage with people we disagree with, and about what happens when two people who should be on the same team end up on opposite sides of a very public fight. So what do you think about what just happened here? Was Joy right to push Jane on these tough questions, or did she cross a line? Was Jane justified in walking off, or should she have stayed and continued the conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss more moments like this that get everyone talking.